be the time that I would do a little bit as well about my thoughts on Easter Island and what I learned and what I didn't learn. Well, I suppose the big thing was that, you know, I got to live that little kid's dream. That was the biggest thing, and it was such a big dream that I never thought that I would actually achieve, you know, going to Easter Island. Peru, you know, I always wanted to come here and go into the Inca ruins and see what Pizarro did and just to see all this, but that was achievable. Easter Island, never thought I'd achieve it, so it was pretty damn amazing. What did I learn? Wow. Well, I learned that people got there around 800. There was several, I suppose, settling periods where settlers came from Polynesia, and they went back and forth. And there was probably no actual settlement from South America. There was just travellers and explorers from Easter Island who went there and would have got the knowledge on how to do several things, and obviously the sweet potato brought that back. That's pretty much what the evidence going to the island suggests, is that there wasn't any coming from South America. It was more the extreme technology and navigational skills of the Polynesians who went around the place and then came back with all that they'd learned. And then, yeah, the population got up to about 12,000-15,000, and the island just couldn't sustain itself, and they just denuded the entire place of trees, and of course that put an end to ocean-going vessels. They don't have any trees, they don't have any canoes, and also their main food supply, the taro, it was needed to be cooked. So if you can't cook your main food supply, I don't know how you'd really survive. So that would have had a real dampener on their fun. Yeah, and then of course you've got the loss of power of the king, and then the social order starts to fall apart because the priestly order of society loses its power, and then the warrior class moves up, and there was complete upheaval in society. So the ancestor worship, which are those statues, they were all ancestor worship. They weren't a religious thing at all. They were about, I suppose, in a way, similar to what we in our culture does by putting up statues of, monarchs and great explorers. So, yeah, so many questions were answered. The whole thing with the pale skin and red hair, that pretty much so was put to death, even though a lot of the locals that I spoke to said that it was definitely their hair. They actually had red hair, and they did have paler skin. The evidence on the island suggests that they didn't, was actually dyed, and their pale skin was a result of going into caves and staying in caves for a prolonged period to make their skin go pale. What else didn't work out? It was just one of the most intriguing places on Earth. And I don't have any questions left. Like, everything was answered, how they got there, why they got there. The only other thing that's a little bit peculiar is the reeds that are inside the volcano lakes that are on the island, that they are the exact same species of reed that's in Lake Titicaca. So I'll have to wait till we get to Lake Titicaca to see that they are exactly the same reeds. But again, that could have been brought back. I mean, your travellers could have brought that species back. Could it have been an actual bird? There's a possibility there, but then you would imagine that species of reed would be everywhere if that were the case throughout South America, but it's not. So, oh yeah, weirdest thing is that population that's there now wouldn't hardly resemble what they used to look like, because there was only 111 actual Easter Islanders left after slave traders, after smallpox, after missionaries took them away. So from 111, an entire population's grown. So yeah, the outbreeding is extraordinary. And as the islanders themselves suggest, it's, they're pretty much so French, Spanish and English, Tahitian. But our guide that we had looked very, very local. He had the very, very frizzy hair, wore his top knot, had the squash nose, but then again that could come from his Tahitian roots. Well, you just don't know. But it's an island that, through archaeology, they've got all the answers. Through the actual people and the oral history, you can't rely on them because of that massive break in population. So, questions answered. If anyone does have any questions, just email me, and I should be able to tell you, hopefully, because I did a hell of a lot of exploring, a hell of a lot of talking to people, and read pretty much every single book on the island. Oh yeah, the other thing, sheep denuded the island, which is why there's so much erosion, and that's why they plant so many trees on the island, is to overcome the erosion problems caused by the overstocking of the sheep. And there isn't a single sheep left on the island. It was designated by the Chilean government to get them all off. What they do have is cattle and horses, and the reason that there's so many horses everywhere is because it wasn't until 1970 that they got their first cars, and it wasn't until only a few years ago that they got their first motorbikes and all that sort of stuff. So the horses are a leftover of transport. The cattle on the island aren't really used for much except to keep the grass down in order to make sure that A, the island looks good, but B, you don't get a strong body of rank grass, which is able to be burnt off and cause a massive bushfire. So they're really just a grass control measure. There are a few goats on the island as well. They hide in amongst the cliffs, especially around KK Cave, which is where the virgins used to be put to make their skin go whiter. Other than that, yeah, and the birds that are on the island are all introduced species to get rid of the mice and the rats, because the population of mice and rats got pretty out of control there for a bit. And there's moai everywhere throughout the island, right through the centre, just all laying down everywhere. Then on none of the maps that I came across suggested there were any moai on the inland, but there was heaps just laying around the place everywhere. And also some moai that actually looked out to sea. It suggested that they all lived inland, but there was a few smaller ones, like they're the really early on moai, the ones with the short ear, weren't very stylised. They were everywhere, especially on Phuket Peninsula. Just a fascinating place, and I'm so happy to have had the chance to go there. And you do have the want to have any intrigue, I'd suggest you go there too.